Hi, and thanks for joining us. This is the SCMP's Facebook Live program. I'm Yordan Latu, Senior Editor, and our guest today is somebody who really needs no introduction, but let me do it anyway. Carrie Lam, former Chief Secretary. She's the Chief Executive candidate, and in all probability, the next Chief Executive of Hong Kong, at the rate you're going, right? Unless we have some Donald Trump-style upset, I think it's going to be you. But anyway, just for the record, my colleagues have been asking you all the hard questions for the past 40 minutes or so, so I'll take it a little easier on you. They weren't hard enough, were they? Okay.
Not hard enough.
All right, okay. Okay, anyway, let's start with this, Carrie. You've come across as kind of the reluctant, you've projected yourself as the reluctant savior when you joined this election. And you can already see the animosity against chief executive candidates, no matter who it is. I saw you unveil your election manifesto, and it was gate crashed by some young protesters. But I saw you walk up to them and speak to them and hand in your platform details. Have you grown up now? I mean, learned a lot now. I remember you during the old national education days, and you came across as somebody totally different, like, bunch of kids, I know what's best, listen to me kind of thing.
Not quite true.
No?
In the summer of 2007, very much like the other day, I went straight into on a Sunday afternoon. It was a very hot day, and people who did not want the government to demolish the Queen's Pier had been camping on site for quite some time. So I took up the position of a Secretary for Development, and my first assignment or task is to tackle this issue, because we need to build for Hong Kong the Central Wanzai bypass. So I went straight into the scene to talk to the protesters, the conservationists, and explain to them why we need to demolish the Queen's Pier to make way for this major trunk road. But I did promise them that the government will attach more importance to heritage conservation in Hong Kong. And I delivered on that. 5 years down the road, Hong Kong has now won a reputation of being a city which has done a lot in preserving our built heritage.
Okay, I have to ask you, when you unveiled your manifesto, you were surrounded by a bunch of tycoons, right? I mean, you had all the business who's who behind you. Now, you know how Hong Kong people think, and you know what the general mood is out there. This alleged collusion between government, big business. So people are worried that you're going to be the same, business as usual past. But at the same time, hang on, I just met somebody outside, a prominent business leader who I won't name, but when I mentioned this part, saying you guys must be happy now because Carrie is pro-business, and he said that you're actually a closet socialist. So I'm confused. Who are you?
That's what I find a bit ironical. When I first emerged as a chief executive candidate, the general feedback or commentary was the business people did not like me because I am too welfarist. And that may be true, because I've been Hong Kong's Director in Social Welfare, and for the last 4.5 years, I was the chairperson of the Commission on Poverty. And I did have a lot of care and concern and compassion for the disadvantaged people. So it was only a matter of weeks, and people now labeled me as being somebody who had this inclination to collude with the business in Hong Kong. I just find it very ironical. But what I can tell you is I'm generally pro-business, because pro-business means that we will help Hong Kong's economy to grow, which will create better jobs for the people, which hopefully will also raise wages. But at the same time, I'm no longer a follower of that philosophy that there is just a trickling down effect. As long as the economy is good, everything is well and fair. I now truly believe, and I have practiced it for the last few years, that the government has an important role to play in sort of using the money from the economic growth to help the disadvantaged.
Okay, but then, when we just talked about this particular example, see, I mean, you do right by one group of people, then you're doing wrong by the other group. So you help them out, and then they're doing wrong by the first group, right? So it's damned if you do and damned if you don't, just like CY.
No. There is something called win-win situations in life. And I do believe, and I have I've practiced what I regard as win-win or even win-win-win situation. For example, as a Secretary for Development, I have worked with one major developer in town using the developer's money to upgrade a few open spaces in Wan Chai. And people love these upgraded quality open spaces, which they can enjoy at no cost to the taxpayers.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have a lot of pressure. Okay, you're going to have a lot of pressure. You're going to have a lot of protests. You're going to have a lot of insults and vile things said about you. How are you going to cope with that? I mean, after a really hard day in the office, what do you do? How do you unwind when you go home?
I'm a practicing Catholic.
Yes, you're very religious.
Pray.
I know that.
Yeah,
yes.
I pray. Oh, by the way, when we talk about religion, there's a very little reference in my manifesto, which may have generated a bit of anxiety amongst religious groups, especially amongst my own faith, that is the Catholics and the Protestants, when I refer to trying to consider or examine whether there is a need to establish a religious affairs unit in the Home Affairs Bureau to coordinate policy. I want to make it very clear now on your Facebook Live that that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with sort of control and regulation of religious activities, because religious freedom is enshrined in the basic law. What I have in mind is some religious associations told me that over the years they have difficulties in getting some government support and assistance, for example, in finding land for them to build churches or places for worship. So they need a little unit within the government to champion for the cause, and that is the only purpose of having.
But you do realize the
religion.
dangers of bringing religious discourse into administration, right? I mean,
Definitely. Yeah, but religion.
Because we're not America.
Yeah, religion has a very important role, as I have just answered your question. Because when sometimes I am upset on occasions that somehow, having done so much for the people of Hong Kong, that I should have attracted that sort of protest and resistance. So the only thing is really to assure myself that as long as this is done with Hong Kong's interest at heart, then somebody will know.
You can't be relying only on religion and prayer to unwind or to recover from the wounds you suffer every day. What do you have any passions? Do you like hobbies, music, books? What do you like?
Well, to be very honest with you, I'm a very uninteresting person.
Really?
Especially in recent years, because work is my top priority. Of course, when I have a young family, I spend a lot of time with my two sons. Of course, with my husband, we traveled rather extensively and spent holidays together. And I love cooking. I still love cooking, but of course, as a CS in the last 4 years, I wasn't even allowed to go into this big kitchen in the CS residence. So I do have hobbies, but to be very honest with you, in recent years, there is simply no time left for my own personal affairs or interest.
You don't have any favorite movie actors? You don't have any favorite authors? Do you have a role model? I mean, is there somebody you really admire?
My mother.
Your mother.
Yes.
Why is that?
She was not an educated woman at all, but she knew very well what was good for her sons and daughters, especially for me. She noticed that perhaps when I was very young that this daughter loved to read books and study, and so she arranged for me to apply to a rather prestigious primary school, a Catholic primary school, when I was young, and in those days it was very difficult to go to those interviews in English, and without much help from the family, because my parents were not educated. And of course, over the years, I have seen how she has brought the family members together, because there's always quarrels and things within the family, but she was always there to be that stabilizing force.
Are you prepared for your family members to be dragged into the spotlight, given what goes on? You saw what happened with your...
Not at all. Not at all. On a very limited scale, I have done so with their support in this campaign. So my husband has written a little letter to me to explain through this little letter why he has agreed for me to take up this challenge. And my eldest son, Jeremy, has also appeared on the rally day to share with the audience how he felt about Mum doing this thing. But other than that, I will keep them very low profile. I really don't want them to be under the spotlight like myself, because I know the pressure.
But they may be unwillingly dragged into it. Are you prepared for that?
Well, both sons, fortunately, are not physically in Hong Kong. One is studying in America, and the other is working in Beijing. So they will not be under that sort of pressure. My husband is trying not to go out these days.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'm just going to ask you two questions,
Yeah.
very quick. Are you sitting pretty now that you've pretty much got the election under the bag? Is there, are you worried about the possibility, because on March 26th it's going to be voting by secret ballot?
Yes.
Are you afraid of people ninja voting for John Tsang,
No, well,
Or mass defection
it's
bias.
healthy to always have that sort of worry and fear when you are in a competitive contest like this. So I will continue to work very hard in the next 3 weeks or so to gain the support of not only those who have nominated me that they will vote for me, but also for those who have not nominated me or who have nominated another candidate to come round to accept that I am a good chief executive for the next term government.
Okay, well, not just to the election committee members who will actually make the decision
Yeah.
whether you get to become the next
Yeah.
CEO or not, but to all your opponents in general,
Yeah.
across the streets,
Yeah.
the young people out there who say you're not the right person, you're CY 2 point, whatever. What's your message to them?
The message is I will really serve with humility, and I really want to connect with everyone in society, particularly the young people, to build a better Hong Kong. That's why I've devoted a whole chapter for the young people in my manifesto, and the most important chapter.
Okay, well, let me just say my conclusion is you're not as boring as you said you were. And that's all we have time for. So thanks very much for watching, and thank you, Carrie Lam, for joining
Thank you
us.
very much. Thank you.